somehow this became a thing where people were referring to just weak men in general as beta. But that's like your number two in command, your supporting character. Batman and Robin, that's your Robin. Still pretty fucking badass in his own right, but he's just not the leader. The thing that you think is the baddest, like whatever, you're probably not that guy. If you're thinking that tearing down other people, portraying them to be less because they're in a supporting role, you're probably not that guy. I can almost guarantee that. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Art of Masculinity. I have been obviously, again, as you guys know, I do look a lot around to figure out what are great topics to talk about. And one of the things that I've come across recently is this usage of this alpha male and the beta male. And one of the things that, people always refer to as alpha and beta, right? You have the alpha male, you have the beta male, and that's really it. Nobody really talks about the other ones. But on the same token, they almost all have no real objective values other than in a hierarchy structure. So if we talk about this, I'll explain what I mean here. So you have alpha, you have beta, you have gamma, you have delta, and then you have omega. And if anybody talks about sigma, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you. Just kidding. But sigma's not really a fucking thing used. So those are the real, kind of focal points. If I'll say that, the focal points around what we're talking about for this episode. Now, the alpha, beta, omega, or alpha, beta, gamma, delta, omega, all they are positions in the hierarchical structure of a social component. And so obviously the alpha is the leader of the male or of the pack, whatever you want to say, right? Then your beta is kind of the second in command, right? This is the person that's not the leader. They're right below that. Again, obviously that's what second means. Duh. Now your gamma is your third, right? That's your third in the hierarchical structure. And then your fourth is your delta. And then the guy who has no actual authority within the social structure is referred to as an omega, right? And then sigma is somebody who's outside of the social construct, but it's not necessarily used as a serious thing. It's more of a joke. So people that are, what about sigma? Shut the fuck up. You're probably an omega. You have no authority. So you just sit there and act like an omega. But really, let's just focus on these, right? So people want to use beta as a way of, kind of referring to men as weak. I don't necessarily agree with this. I've probably said it, not probably, I have said it. I've used beta before and kind of referred to a negative connotation of somebody being weak. But when you really look at the definition of this, the honest to God truth is that somebody who's a beta is obviously not somebody who is weak or somebody who is not of value. They are the second in command in a hierarchical structure. They are the one that is supportive of the alpha, but also, doesn't need to be that number one leader within their social community. Why would that be negative? We've made this, and I don't know where it came from, to be honest, but somehow this became a thing where people were referring to just weak men in general as beta. In all reality, they should have been omegas, right? Omegas have no fucking authority within the social construct and just kind of sit around doing fucking nothing, right? If you're going to say a dude's weak, he's more of an omega than he's anything else, right? But we made this that beta was like weak, but that's like your number two in command, right? That's like the guy that's always your supporting character, right? That's your fucking Batman and Robin. That's your Robin, right? Like, still pretty fucking badass in his own right, but he's just not the leader, right? And the same thing when you're walking down this path of gamma and then delta. I mean, these are still men with authority in the social structure, just not as much authority or any authority maybe when the beta and the alpha are around. And so when we just look at this in its plain language, instead of trying to create this media bullshit around alphas and betas and the uninitiated or the unaware version of what people talk about when they're referring to this, people who actually haven't looked into the definitions of these and they start talking about it. It's like, come on, guys, like you're just trying to create some form of deteriorated value for that other person because you feel insecure about yourself and you're not actually a true alpha, right? You're not actually a true leader. And let's talk about that for a second. That true leader, that true alpha is not going to be like, you beta little bitch. Like that motherfucker's going to support you, right? Because he knows that when you rise and anybody else around him rises, he rises, right? When one rises, we all rise kind of thing. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at this, that whole construct of breaking this down and saying that betas are weak little bitch men, I mean, motherfucker, like, do some research. First off, if you're going to say that, use the right term. It's probably an omega. And second off, if you're going to say that shit, ask yourself why the fuck you think you're an alpha. If you haven't been put in that position by default by people who really just inherently look up to you and the fact that you carry an air of leadership about you, if you haven't been put in that position, you've had to fight for it or think that you deserve it, probably not the alpha. I'm going to tell you right now. Now, you may have encircled yourself with people who are less of desiring that alpha, or who are beta, omega, or deltas, have no problem being a supporting cast member. You may have surrounded yourself with that so you feel like the alpha, but you're not really the alpha, right? You're not an alpha, because those men can hold their own weight and leadership and presence with other alphas. And that's a big difference, in my opinion, when we're looking at the leader of a social construct, or the leader in and of themselves as that alpha. The other piece to that is just remembering that when you're looking at the gamma and the delta, there are other supporting cast members to the social, environment. And those men have vital roles within society as well. And I think that's where we all need to kind of come to this conclusion. Instead of trying to deteriorate the value of these other men within society, it's really saying, like, we all need supporting cast members. And even if you are truly an alpha, you don't fucking know everything. So people supporting you with different things are always welcomed, right? It is necessary in every job, in every corporation, in anything that operates with human beings, that there is a structure in which people have different pockets of knowledge, and that knowledge ends up creating a joint mission in which they all contribute in their own way to create the overall objective or achievement of the objective. So it's really understanding, okay, if we're going to look at these things by their definitions, they're of a hierarchical structure. And in that structure, they're supporting cast members. And so to deteriorate somebody or break them down because the fact that they play that specific role within the social construct, in my opinion, you're probably one of the supporting roles in the construct, because you're not truly an alpha. So at the end of the day, the thing you think you are, the thing that you think is the baddest, like best, whatever, you're probably not that guy at the end of the day. If you're thinking that tearing down other people or portraying them to be less because they're in a supporting role, you're probably not that guy. I can almost guarantee that. Think about that before you go out the door and start claiming people are betas and start looking at people and saying that's a beta bitch or some fucking dumbass thing that you guys say regarding that stuff, because those people provide a shit ton of value. They just may not be as comfortable as you are. I think every man has the ability to be a leader 100%. It is a trained quality. It is not something that is inherent. On the same token, I don't know that every man wants to embrace that leadership. And who's to say that that is wrong? Just because they're not embracing that leadership role, but you desire to, doesn't mean that that is a wrong value for men. That just means that they actually like to be in the supporting cast member. Most you motherfuckers out there that are entrepreneurs right now, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have supporting cast members that help you operate your fucking business. Well, if you didn't have those motherfuckers, then what would you do? You'd have everything on your own fucking plate. And if you started as a solopreneur, like myself, my wife, and many other people I know, then that's not a fucking fun place to be. That is long days, a lot of hours, and that is creation and back end construction. Like, it is a lot of shit. If you didn't have supporting cast members, you wouldn't fucking be as available as you are now, as instrumental as you are now to your community. If you've built a community, if you've created a strong business, you wouldn't have that business without them. So why don't we start showing some love for these motherfuckers that, y'all are fucking hating on all the time, because they don't really deserve that. And B, they are just people who actually really like those roles. I have friends that are that way in my life, and I truly value them. They bring a ton of value to my life, and it doesn't make me think of them any less as men. just because they don't fit into that structure of wanting to be a fucking true alpha leader male. And very few men are that. So just remember that there's very few men that truly are. Really understanding this, when we go by definitions and we really look at what this says, let's just leave it at that. Like, your negative connotation is just showing your own insecurities and where you sit in the hierarchical structure. To be honest, you may as well not expose yourself to that. You may as well just start to work on your own shit and start to use these men in your life that fit those roles of betas, gammas, deltas, and omegas. Start to use these men to support, a higher calling, or to embrace their support because they want to give it to you, right? So leave yourself with that, as opposed to creating this negative connotation around other men who fit different social roles within the confines of how we collect ourselves and communicate. That is, to me, one of the biggest things I've learned. Now, guys, I will tell you this. I'm calling y'all out a little bit, but at the end of the day, I was that guy too. Like I said, I've used the term beta before. I've criticized betas. I've said that kind of shit too. And what it takes is coming to the realization that that's not necessarily true. And it was protecting some form of insecurity that I had, right? And it was deteriorating somebody else's value within the social structure because I felt inferior to them maybe in some way, or I felt like I just had to break them down. That's how I established superiority, right? Or my own perception of being the leader. But obviously, coming around and really assessing this conversation and assessing my own mindset, it helps me to say, well, fuck, I was wrong too. And you're all entitled to be wrong. God damn, man, we're fucking human beings. We're all entitled to be wrong. That's okay. We don't get it fucking right 100% of the time. And it's just to say that you have the ability to change in different seasons of your mindsets and your growth along this journey. And for me, my growth led me to the point of saying that these men in our lives, they create an extreme amount of value, and the value that they bring can be either supporting a business, or supporting you emotionally, or supporting you spiritually, or supporting you in any other way that helps your life be improved, your mindset, your perception, who you are as a man, how you hold yourself, whatever it is. But it's that revelation to me has helped me to embrace some of the brothers in my life that fit different roles in my life. And it's not necessarily that they're all fucking alphas and leaders. There's no way. If you had a life full of that, you'd probably have very high stress, miserable life, to be honest, in a lot of ways. Not that it's bad, but there's going to be a lot of challenges there too. So ultimately, for all you guys out there, if this is the first time you're hearing this, have this conversation with yourself. And if you've heard this before, or if you use that term about like fucking betas and shit like that, like you've used that stuff, just have a different conversation around it and see how you can put this healthier mindset into your perspective so that you can still create value for those people. Just because you may not be a beta doesn't mean that being that beta is bad. They're not any less of a man than you. Same thing goes for your omegas and your deltas, or your gammas and your deltas and your omegas. I mean, omegas are just people floating around and don't really fucking have any tie to anybody. They're kind of on their own. I mean, maybe they just fucking love life better that way, but they provide nothing to you. You don't have to judge them. That's not really what we're here to do. So just think about this conversation for yourself, how it looks in your life, how it looks on the people in your life as well, and how maybe you can create a better relationship by using a different mindset around this.